The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.
Happy Holy Day, Moors. Welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and more science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, I am pleased to present to you, along with our National Grand Sheikh, Tarik Bey, as he presents, or we present, Let's Talk About Government, Comprehension, and Dissollutions. But before we begin, please be sure to like, share, and if you have not already done so, subscribe to our channel. Now, here we are. Greetings.
Salam. Alaikum. Shalom. Vadimakum. Islam. We're going to talk about comprehension and dissolution in relationship to government, because one of the things that we recognize, Dr. G, as things are changing on the world front now, so when we're talking world, we're not necessarily talking about the globe or the firmament of Midgard. You're talking about the operative politics that is generally associated anthropologically and geographically in the political forums that make up what you call the political jurisdictions and nation states of the world collectively, and the general customs and traditions that dominate the political arena is also referred to as the world.
Okay.
So,
would you also say that when we think in terms of world, most folks think in terms of their sphere of,
yes,
of knowledge or influence, or
yes,
where they domicile or where they associate with?
yes, and that's part of it, but not just the geography as people think. So when you're talking about, just like if you're talking about, say, old world, you're talking about traditions, customs, political organizations structured and established for governing tribes, peoples, territorial, jurisdictional lands, etc. And they come and they go, or they may dissolve according to political developments, wars, decisions made by the peoples of the territories. And I think it is necessary for us to just have this lightweight discussion in this area, since it's involving what's going on around the planet today on both a physical and metaphysical, the physical and metaphysical venues. And knowing that many of the people have been constrained from true world history and jurisprudence, positive law jurisprudence, because most of the people have been trained, as you already know, under animal husbandry and also under connotative linguistics, not lacking intelligence, but lacking knowledge of the operations of things, and therefore being ignorant, not necessarily by a negative intent, but ignorant by lack of knowledge, and therefore by default being subject to a lot of the corrupt operations that have been manifesting, particularly in the last couple of hundred years at North America and exported around the world. And the interconnections of the international political venues, many whose political geographical boundaries have shifted here and there, and also their what you would call construct or constitutional rules of law having been altered, some by free will, some by virtue of war, and by our people not necessarily being made erudite in the so-called educational systems, the true operations of jurisdictions relative to government has not been properly taught among our people, has much to do with why we're dealing with this conversation, because of things that are taking place with the economics, with what they've been hearing, the reset week, that's another subject, but we may touch on that here and there. Their economic status, the economic conditions that people are suffering from, issues of what they call inflation, the issues of de jure and de facto, quote unquote, operations in government. What you discover as we're talking to our people and many other people aside from ourselves who are helping or trying to assist our people to get back to their proper status, to their proper identity, to their proper right of inheritance, etc. What you discover is many people don't comprehend because their concepts are incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're just having this conversation in general so that some things that they already have in their possession, literary wise, and in their cognizance relative to things that they've heard, and the capacity to make discernment is why we're having this conversation. Because I know that many people think they have, how do you say, from the connotative linguistics, think they comprehend the politics, and they really don't, because they're assuming some things mean things that they don't mean, and they're assuming that they're part of political orders that they've never been a part of, although they've been involved or affected by them. And so that they would make more a clear distinction to be capable and competent of making reclamation and a reversion of their estates, again, is why we're having this conversation. So I want to go into a little bit of what's even in the title so that people, as they're going along with our conversation, that they're not locked out of what we're actually saying, because we already know that people are going to assume that some of these words mean what they don't mean.
Okay.
All right. So just to share a little bit. All right. So we're talking about comprehension and dissolution, right? And so also things that are synonyms to these that are actually operative. And because it's not talked about in either mainstream news or is not necessarily taught within the venues that they're used to, they're usually you have a handful of people who are adept in basic etymon principles and etymology. They have no problem. People who are adept have no problem. But we must acknowledge that most of our people don't know the fundamental etymological meanings of words, not because they're ignorant, because they've been deliberately taught connotative linguistics, but they're not aware of it. So that a lot of things that we've been saying over the years is not wasted, that people can review both their own concepts and review what has been told to them and what's being told to them in mainstream communication systems, which are colored, that many of them don't know are colored. You know, they just think it's people's attitudes, that they can make, that some of the people who've been listening here with us at the House of Reawakening Minds can make discernment. This is the reason. So I'm making it clear. That's why we're having this conversation.
And because there are a lot of you out there who call us at House of Reawakening Mind, and the very nature of your questions and queries have to do with the subject matter, a subject at hand.
Lack of comprehension.
Lack of comprehension. And so, Grand Sheik, you and I, we have conversations frequently when I get a call or something that is of a nature that I don't feel like I can adequately respond to the caller, then you and I end up with having a discussion, which ends up into being a class, which hopefully, like today, ends up say, let's make it a presentation.
Even the conversation that you was presenting to me when I arrived down here, this afternoon, and you called Say, or are you at the station? Then you came pick me up, and you begin to share with me your usual uplifting conversations, and of course, even at points where we may not be clear, we always make sure we pull each other's coattail relative to comprehension.
Right.
You know, or what people would call understanding, overstanding, or comprehension.
Right, because I'm always trying to, you know, like a lot of folks that call me and they say, Grand Sheik is deep. And I one sister, well, that's the conversation I get. And one sister in particular we spoke yesterday at length, and she said, I have to listen to Grand Sheik's videos sometimes 3 and 4, 5 times because it's so deep. And then, the light bulb comes on. Mm-hmm. And so I said, don't worry about it. I said, I listened to you for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years before the light bulb was, and I was up close and personal. It was, I got it, but I didn't realize I had gotten it. A lot of times, and this may be the nature of many people who, listen to the videos that are produced, is there's this thing called, osmosis.
Yeah.
And so just because you're in the vicinity of it, mm-hmm. you don't realize that you're learning. That's why they have things like meditation that you go to sleep by and different things, because somehow the subconscious mind is awake and is learning. But I think a lot of the things don't come to the surface, to the conscious mind, until we're in a crisis or till there's a real pinch, or when somebody's like, I don't know, look within yourself.
And this is where people need to know, just like when we were talking about higher self and lower self, right? Mm-hmm. And then when we're talking about the adept chambers of the mind, adeptus chambers of the mind, and erudition distinguished from mere education.
Please explain erudition for those who may not be aware of what we should have been getting versus what we've gotten called education.
All right. So on simplistic form, let's just deal a basic dictionary so that people can have reference for themselves.
Okay.
And go and do some, and this is back to our general practice where we always tell people get dictionaries, basic etymology, etc. All right. Keep on talking while I'm.
Well, yeah. So, like I said, there are a lot of times when the questions that come in are part, and because they are similar, a lot of times it has become apparent to me that the confusion, for instance, on the subject matter of government, is widespread. Mm-hmm. And jurisdiction, as you said, and I am learning more, because every time I have to come to you for clarification, normally for someone else, it is an education for myself, and I want to be able to fluently respond to the queries that come in and not leave people hanging. And the question is, in a lot of minds, is what is the right way to, for instance, we talk about nationalization and birthright and all of these things. What is right? Who is right? Those are the kinds of questions. Who should I nationalize under? Where should I, under,
all that
or through?
And see, even the under. We'll continue.
Yeah, well, it's those kinds of questions. Today, very long conversation with a brother who was born in Jamaica, but is domiciling in Japan. Mm-hmm. And the question, and this is for probably anyone that is living outside of the, what would you call it, the geographical U.S., but listening and realizing that they're not whatever they've been called, but they are in fact are more. If in this case, the brother's question and his consort's question was, while we have not had any problems domiciling where we are in Japan, we want to make sure that we are living under the correct, the structure, or we're operating as we should as Moors. Now I know before when I said, well, you were born in Jamaica, mm-hmm. That's where your nativity is. But he reminded me, and I said, but yes, and he reminded me that Jamaica was not the original.
Yeah, I make. Yeah.
What is it now?
Jamaica.
I make a okay. Well, then again, but the question is now that they're in Japan and they still want to operate as within the structure of a more sorry y'all for that noise for the Moorish government, as under Moorish government. How do they know that they are doing that? How do they know that if, for instance, they do have some kind of a issue with the government of Japan
right, now,
as Moors?
As an example,
yeah,
just like what you're just saying right now.
Yeah.
Now, and then consider things that we've talked about.
Okay.
What is the universal venue? Universal. Remember how Jolly said, "Take your place among the affairs of men." So if you're domiciling by whatever degree or category of what you'll call immigration or alien visitor, etc., green card that they may use, they will have different classifications on your stay in that territory and the conditions of the stay. That's why they have like A1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 19, like that, which would be on instruments that they would have. If there's any controversy, they would immediately go to what is called consular venue. And it's already established.
And that's one of the things that they also mentioned. The fact of the matter is they have, being in, say, Japan, they have not run into any Moors that they can, come together. And so we're wondering whether they should be establishing their own consular venue.
Let's put this in a little bit of more context, and then we'll get back to that.
Okay.
Slightly. If they choose to do a little bit more research with a lot of the national Nipponese that they call Japanese.
Okay.
Nipponese.
So,
yes, right.
So they need to look, search out the Nipponese.
Then, if they recognize that something of the history, they'll start telling you some of your Moorish history. Mm. But they know nobody tries to make waves because the whole world has been pretty much under occupation. But when you go back, then they'll start telling you, some of them will, the elders, according to the spirit that you emit, of the ancient Nipponese dynasties of Asiatic African descent. Tell them to start looking at the older books in China, and you'll start looking at people that look like your aunt.
Well, then one of the things that brother said to me is that they have seen the step pyramids there. They've seen the Buddhas with the kinky hair that they try to say are
pineapple
or shells instead of the
Stop.
But they know better.
Yeah. Oh, now back to what I just said. See. They know that most of our people don't know that they are the mothers and fathers of the human family. And our people keep thinking the different homogenous tribes that have domiciled in different territories and manifested in many blends of genetic form, thinking that we're not brothers and sisters. We absolutely are. But they know also because of the contamination of all of us, and this is around the world. But we here are the most contaminated, that we have a tendency to get hostile and angry when people tell us the truth about our history because we disconnect from it. No different than brothers and sisters, as an example. Say brothers and sisters, they're saying, I make a, right? And because you already know you don't pronounce the J anyway. You get the whole point. Jamaica. All right. So as the hybrid Europeans who are controlling the North deals with them, they project that they are not Al-Moroccans, although Jamaica is America. But they've trained the people in their mind that America is the political jurisdiction that North America, controlled by the hybrid Europeans at Central North America, not including Canada and Mexico. But America comes from the tip of Chile, including all the islands, which are known as Americana. Write that down. Write down Americana, and you'll see it's all of the islands.
Okay.
And so here is a hybrid European claiming to be somebody he's not, who's controlling Americana and having Americans separate from each other, jurisdictionally thinking they are foreigners in another part of their own land. There's a psychological fencing or block or blockage. Therefore, there's limited comprehension in the reality of the geographical politics as well as the geographical archaeology, and so in anthropology. And so even when, and they probably know because they have not been what you call totally controlled at the North as we are here. If you get the point.
When you say the North, what do you
North America. North America Central under the U.S. corporation jurisdiction. Because now we know that by now they know it's not a country, that it's a private corporation. But because it's been promoted as a country, they keep saying America is a country, but they must know that that's mental response. That's called animal response or farm animal response to what you call a false matrix or false mother or false matriarchy or false concept of government. And therefore, there's an allegiance to that, just like your mother. And so our people keep thinking their inheritance is in the U.S., when actually that's a foreign, alien, hostile, occupying force of hybrid Europeans incorporated in Austria and Davos, Switzerland, and run from there with a network around the planet for conquest, having nothing to do with country, having everything to do with conquest of countries. And so our people are already off track because they don't comprehend what they're dealing with. And they don't a lot of times when we're going into different subjects about jurisdiction, they're hearing it and they're not hearing it. Therefore, the challenging of jurisdiction which would connect to the status, is always out of line by default.
I'm just thinking while you were speaking about the conquest and so forth, and what popped into my head as you were saying that is the very name conquistador.
Yes.
The Spanish Inquisition, the conquistadors, in their name said, we come to conquer.
Yes.
We come to overthrow.
Just like when you see them say on the death notes, right? It says in hoc signo vinces. That's Moorish Latin, means in this sign we conquer. And so even when people have been going to church in the islands, right, on up to the north, right, and mostly in the islands, they're still bluntly pumping dominant Catholicism. And you'll see the cross put through a crown, like a sword. You'll see the cross going through the top of a crown.
Absolutely. And
they'll have under the in hoc signo vinces. In this sign, we conquer. Right? And
allegedly, that was what Constantine saw, because a sword in the sky that was supposed to be his sign, that's what he was supposed to do. Now,
isn't this back to even our conversation that we had today with the company that we had, right? Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed is the official name of Constantinism, which is presented to the people here, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, as Christianity.
Right.
And they, out of ignorance, have been funding their own enslavement through the church, which appears innocent, which is why they've been told that there's a separation of church and state, so they don't make the cognitive connection that the state belongs to the church. And in fact, the church ain't subject to the state. The state is subject to the church. Everything's been flipped and reversed.
Yeah, you're right about that.
That's called masking. And it's called proxy. Even most of the wars that take place, the hybrid Europeans who are claiming to be somebody they're not, that starts with the letter J, that control the politics, control the press, control the bank system, are also pretending to be Christians, Muslims, and Americans. And J's. and they're running all of them.
Right.
Now, this is why when we talked about past weeks ago, the motu proprio, and for people who, that's to give people directives so they can start paying attention to things and not just everything everybody says. And if they look at the pictures, they'll notice that people from around the world carrying the labels, Muslims and Christians and Jews, under the guise of the Pope ending the doctrine of discovery. They had that meeting. They were kissing the Pope's rings, and a lot of people took it from the position, for the sake of peace and showing that all the religions are coming together. And you have these civil rights leaders and everything, and all these Christian ministers and Muslim imams meeting with the Pope, and they're ending the doctrine of discovery, and they're kissing his rings. It's because they're all members of the Roman Curia. But yet it's there for people to see, yet the people still don't see because their mind is locked into what they think a Muslim is, what they think a Christian is, a Jew, and they think it's all different. They're different sects of the same thing.
They're all Catholic constructs, constructed. They're all Catholic constructs. And when you think about the Catholic, even the meaning, cathars, what's it? Cathode and anode. You're electrician. So they are the ones that take.
That means what? Polar opposites.
Yes, right.
So in what you would call metaphysical terms, as presented in what you call secret society, they would say anode or Allah, cathode, Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at the wars, right, they're classified what you would call East and West. Or they would say the Christian wars against the Muslims, and under Muslim, they would include all of the Asiatic religions, from Confucianism, Buddhist, etc. That's still all classified what you call, that's why they call the dominant religions Islam, Christianity, Jew. And the others would be subcategories. But what the people haven't been aware of is that the Pope took over all of them.
Right.
This is where you have the Inquisition operations. We have Indexus Librorum Prohibitorum, Indexus Librorum Expurgatorius, and the general term that's put among the masses is called the Great Christian Book Burnings. So it doesn't mean they burned all the books. That means they burned many of the libraries, just like Luxor. The libraries of Luxor, when they went and burnt the library of Luxor, and they took many of the scripts, took them underground into hell. That's the tunnels. But the masses didn't know the tunnels exist until recently, except people who are adepts. And when they told the people about the tunnels, all they could say is hell, which they are, but the people thought hell was, a fiery pit underground with the devils. Well,
it is.
Allegorically, it is true.
You're right.
But not the way the people thought it was. So the power that Rome has been exercising is some of the knowledge that was extracted from Luxor. And then now you're getting into what you call Constantinian wars, or the war with Constantine, or code where they talk about some of the wars where they say that Muhammad took the head of Constantine. Those are allegorical stories. And this is where you see Sophia going back and forth between the Muslims and
Sophia isn't that symbolic, but also isn't that knowledge,
yes,
wisdom, knowledge?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's also what? Metaphysical metaphors dealing with philosophy.
Yeah.
See, now being a doctor of law, and a doctor of theology, means divinity, because that's what the study of. All right. You have some of this knowledge, and we have a degree or background where some things that you may have in your early stages of learning taken in literal. As you grow with it, you recognize many of these things are metaphors,
right,
or signs and symbols that represent a body of knowledge or a discipline. The masses have not been aware of that,
True.
which is why when you give them a Quran, a Bible, Uwaspi, the Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, Gita, etc., Upanishads, etc., those who have been availed some of these literatures, the Kybalion, etc., in their mind, these things are different religions, but the priesthood know that they're connected philosophy. All of them are connected. So one of the keys of the power of the priesthood is that they have separated or created sects in order to separate the people. Sects just means sections.
Right.
They have cut it up. That's the chopping up of what? Horus, spreading it around the world. See, you've got to look at these metaphors.
Right.
Or Tower of Babel, meaning the same thing.
And when you
so the
when
people
you do
can't
that,
understand the language.
Yeah. So when you make and create all these different sects, you dilute or make smaller any attempt to bring the whole
so
together.
They have no power.
Yes.
It's called schismata, i.e., divide and conquer.
Yes.
See, when you look at this, you'll see how it plays out in history and in organized government every day. But because they have different names, most people who are not thinking critically, doesn't dawn on them, these things are all connected. They change the name according to the time. People think certain things ended that never ended. No different than how many people recall the motu proprio, not in its name, but when the Pope of Rome in 2013 called politicians, civic leaders, religious leaders from around the world 2013, and they promised to end the doctrine of discovery, and most people, except for a handful, didn't even dawn on them. They came together with the commitment of ending the doctrine of discovery, which is known in law cases that they've been claiming the people's lands in the islands over here in Almarak. And look at your court cases where you have indigenous people in the islands, in South America, Central America, Americana, which means the islands, North America, Canada, Greenland. You have cases where Aboriginal people went to courts to claim their rights to land, and most of the cases that were lost under the doctrine of discovery that superseded any right of claim they had. And yet most people, it didn't dawn on people that it's still operative, even though they're saying it right into their face. Nobody brings it up as a subject matter while claiming rights. They start talking about racism as part of the mental response, or what you call the animal husbandry response. But because they got degrees for going to school, they accept incorrectly that their degrees represent ascension in gnosis or ascension in knowledge, therefore qualifying them to operate in the civil jurisdictions of the world under the guise or category of citizenship.
Well, I'd like to know why no one has ever addressed to reverse the fact that, was it Woodrow Wilson, whoever it was that took our allodial titles and changed them into, this
into mortgages and
deeds. Why was that? Has that not ever been addressed to the point of being challenged and reversed?
But they did. See, this is the whole point. When you're talking about the trust that you hear people mention, let's just say trust. How many people showed you the document? How many people discussed content? How many people discussed the establishment of the old Canaanite temple? They keep avoiding saying that. You notice how they keep on avoid. You ever notice how when people talk about the Moorish Sivan National Movement that are in some of the organizations that were put in place to present this information, we'll mention it only once, but we'll never emphasize the Moorish Science Temple. Really was the Moorish Temple of Science, or the Moorish Science Temple of America. They'll say it was established in 1913, when the record shows Old Canaanite Temple was established in 1913. During the same periods of time that Woodrow Wilson, one of the dragons of the Ku Klux Klan, who was a praetor of the United States Corporation, met on Jekyll Island, 1913. Counter move.
Counter move, okay.
Do you understand?
Mhm.
So what was the argument? The restoration or reversion of estate according to national and international law. What occurred at that time? The corporation, by virtue of the interruption of the right of title, collapsed, went bankrupt. So therefore, the meeting was necessary, and they had the reiteration of the blocking of that information. So you had the infiltration take place. Then the old Canaanite temple became what? Moorish Temple of Science, also known as the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, registered in Cook County as a civic organization to teach the people or their heirs government. You got to look. See, when you put these puzzles together, you comprehend what he did, but you also comprehend the opposition.
Would that be why they?
Yes.
Well, I did tell you, and I don't know if he's on the in the chat, but Brother Joel had sent me to information last week. They were here and sent me information that he had found on the Prophet Noble Drew Ali's the vast, the trust 10105905.
Yeah.
That he was.
And then look at the give me the questionnaire. Well.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to show you how things are in people's faces, but they don't know what they're looking at because the people who should have been teaching them aren't teaching them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So here is our authority.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You see right here? Right there? It says copy. Book 521, page 579. State of Illinois, Cook County. Subsection number 10105905. File for record.
And he actually found the document, though.
Yeah, but I'm saying to you,
that is right there in our face on the back.
Meaning, but the people have not been taught truthfully by the so-called people who were put in power to make law and to enforce law. And it was supposed to be known by the members. Now you're looking again at the infiltration and the sellout, which is why the 36 files that was published on websites have been redacted and some removed. But people can still go down into at Washington District of Roman Goddess Columbia and do researches. This is why you'll see a lot of people who are part of that network of the trader get so hostile when you mention Charles Mosley Bay, or referred to as CM Bay, who exposed a lot of the knowledge of the Addip Chamber with information that he had to go to Mexico, to the Yucatan, to retrieve. And he put it in book forms called The Clock of Destiny. Now, that's a known fact. But if people don't have a background, they start looking at the divisions and arguing personalities rather than doing research because they're not trained to do research. Keep this in mind. And then their concepts are wrong, therefore their comprehension is wrong. And as people are waking up, you begin to understand that the censorship that people are suffering now is index librorum prohibitorum that never ended. Index librorum expurgatorius. It never ended. They think this stuff is new. It's just being reinforced because people are waking up.
Is it perhaps we have not paid attention until a couple of years ago when stuff changed and became, it made folks dig deeper into things that they had taken lightly. But like you said, these things have been going on
in your face
all along.
It's just that because our people were more deeper under MK Ultra, that they was assuming that as things are opening up now, that this stuff is new. It was always there. Is that they didn't have resistance from the rest of the world, and they didn't have the internet that was used only by the CIA and FBI and
the alphabet agencies
for themselves, and because of squabbles within, information got out and internet got to the public venue for purposes of control, and they're infighting. It was not constructive for the public. But once it got out, because of disputes that was happening in the CIA, etc., and their interchanges with activities that was taking place in Sindh, that you call India, in Manchuria, that you call China, and in Russia, etc., and stuff being leaked out relative to them staying ahead of the curve, unlike the imaginary person that they call Snowden. That's not really the person.
Oh, really?
It's an operation.
So
although there is a person, a natural being
playing the role.
That is yes. That they started leaking information, and therefore, to get ahead of the curve, they start using the internet to try to lock us back down. But at the same time, it was growing with people who had knowledge being able to take over the news distribution that the Khazarian Mafia have absolutely 666 control over under 6 corporations, controlling the media, controlling the music industry, controlling Hollywood, all the same
medical stuff.
And their names, if you do research, are on all of your major corporation directors' heads, on these corporations that people have always thought were separate. They're all members of the Roman Curia. But people keep thinking, as an example, most people who don't know, and this is a perfect example, think that the so-called Saudi family in Saudi Arabia are Muslims. They're Khazarian Jews. Oh, sweet. People think the CCP of China are Asiatic Manchurians.
Right.
No. They're persons, John 8:44 people, who under the wars, what they call the Opium Wars, took over the banking system to rob Manchuria. China is its corporate name.
Right, so it's not, and I realize it's not the people.
It's not the organic people.
It's not the
never
organic
have
people.
been.
I saw a YouTube video maybe a year or so ago, and this was obviously what we would call a hybrid European who was in China and was talking about all of the corporations they had and everything they were running and how good business was in China, and they don't look like the organic people of the land, and then I realized, wait a minute,
that's CCP.
That's who's running stuff.
That's the CCP.
Absolutely.
This is back to what we talked about, a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Proxy. Everything is done by masking and proxy. This is why even they create the nom de guerre or straw man to do things with our estates in a proxy, which is the nom de guerre, which is a corporate entity or trust written in a structure that sounds homonym like your appellation or name, but it's not you. And yet it's on the stock market. So they're trafficking people, and the people don't even know they themselves, by virtue of birthright theft, are on the stock market. They're funding the corporation. So in order to cover it up, they call them citizens. This is why when you look at Supreme Court cases relative to people's rights of claim, and they start making them, and then they have the rule where U.S. citizens can't contest, and they start talking the moral argument and the ethical of it, not knowing that their stock So their comprehension of what even these terms actually mean are incorrect. Again, this conversation. Because what occurs almost every time that we do something, or we do a class, right? Just talking. And you can only do but so much in 2 hours anyway.
All right.
But many of the questions that come up in chat, right? And in questions that are presented to you, through your travels, even when you're doing official office hours with Dr. G, right? They're not things that we haven't talked about over and over again. What does that demonstrate? That the comprehension isn't there. Many people who've had this information and who have been operating with it, what do you discover? Constantly. When it dawns on you why many of the questions exist, even with people who've had this information or been going to the temples for decades, their comprehension is flawed. Drew Ali, knowing this would take place, he told the Moors, he said, the half has not been told. And he said, if I told you everything, you go back to sleep. Say, study yourselves. And he said, what? Our concepts are all wrong. But he knew that in time, and he said the day would come that people would come into the movement with their eyes already open. Yeah. And would carry out my law. See, but you got to put these things in context. Because people then, when they look at people that may be, say, in the temple as an example, after they've studied, and then they'll start critiquing and say, they've been in the temple and this and that, and how come this hasn't been done? How come that hasn't been done? It's because their comprehension is incorrect. But they have been trained to think that because they're participating in the outreach venue, that qualifies them. And that people with titles have been controlling their information, that they are the authority. Therefore, their comprehension of government, they've been allowing traders to govern their lives, i.e. trust authority. Write that down, y'all. Trust authority under the guise of public servant, and they've reversed roles with these people. But they know these people have not been taught government, and therefore they don't know better. They're under a wardship status, thinking that they're, i.e., citizens of the corporation.
And we don't want to be citizens of the corporation.
They do, but this is what the civil rights movement is all about. Well, remember, things that we have supported and funded in the name of thinking that we're being liberated, we were actually sanctioning the estate transfer. But because no one was teaching our people government, i.e., and therefore a lot of people, even today, like if you travel the country, and I know that in recent years, right, even in your travels of learning and development, we don't have to name parts, you became active in certain branches based on civic presentment, as an example, right?
Yes.
And then you grew up, which I told you would do.
Yes, very quickly.
And you let it go.
Yes, I did.
And it's because of your knowledge base. What liberated you was your knowledge, not you rejecting anything. It is no different than...
Your knowledge will make you reject things. Because you know better.
Because when truth and fact come together. So as your knowledge grew, you begin to liberate. Know ye the truth, and the truth will what?
Make you free.
That's it. But so if you don't study yourself, if you're just taking what you call the cover of things and what you call the general public perception, your concepts and comprehension will be flawed by design. It's not that it ain't there. How many times we've told people over and over again, do yourself a favor, read the philosophy page of the General Education Board.
Countless.
And yet, how many years do we have a history of our parents marching and praying and having a meeting, going to PTA meetings and starting little organizations, talking about the children, talking about better books, talking about the high tax they've been paying all their lives. Meanwhile, their children then grew up and had children, and they have the same problem. Matter of fact, it's gotten worse. And then you have people in the name of scholarship writing books like Johnny Can't Read and a whole bunch of other stuff. And yet they'll talk about the results. And yet in books like that, you'll not see a category that those scholars put in that book saying etymon/etymology, and then teaching them where the break is. But when the people don't know what's wrong, they don't know that they're still being cheated. In other words, if I tell you something is wrong and I press it on you, it is dutifully fair and just that I teach you what's broken and how to fix it. A teacher that's honorable does not teach you to be a follower. They teach you to fix, i.e., they start off, yes, giving you a fish sandwich with the intentions and letting you know that the next thing coming is a fishing pole.
Right.
So if you're a fisherman of men, you're going to show them how to fish. So, like in the Bible, as an example, when Yahshua was among his people, and he said, I got to go. He said, but I will send a comforter unto you. And he said, well, if you go away, how are we going to know God and all this stuff? When he says, look first back into the hole from which you were dug. Study your chronology, study your history. Because if you don't know your pedigree and bloodline, you can't know God. That's your connection. All of these metaphors and philosophies are right there in the books that the people have been having, but they've never been properly presented to the people because they're not looking at the Berber origin. They keep associating you with Rome and Rome's translations of Berber culture. And so the Berber culture is the Sabian cultures. They're Sabian Moors. So the people, they don't know, they're taking the culture of their actual foremothers and forefathers from the conqueror's eyes and perspective, not because he misunderstood it. He translated them out and away from their original context and concepts. And when necessary, made alterations again. That's why there's over 136 what they call translations. Just like say you can go to a library now and you won't find it in your regular bookstores, as an example, right? So you go get a Schofield Bible, right? And so ask the average preacher or people that's doing what you would call study of history, and they're going to give these people Bible studies, right? And they'll talk about King James, Gideon's, and the different versions, right? Ask that preacher, 90% of them who are Masons, say, where's the Schofield Bible?
I still got mine back there. I can't
ask them the Schofield. So in your old Schofield Bible, it's got Allah. And in your Bibles before that, it has Muhammad. So people don't know that the priesthood took Muhammad out of the Bible. They think that just means Christianity, Constantine, operations that they've been getting, and they think that it's a separate religion. Just like most people who claim Islam don't know that Islam is a Coptic sect, Christianity. They just don't claim it because of the corruption. But over the years, because of not really teaching the real history, most Muslims don't know that they're Christians. Mm-hmm. And they fall for the schism. Even look at, like, say, when Prophet Muhammad, from his teaching, even from Hadith, etc., he'd always say what? There shall be no sectalism in Islam. What, they got about 87 different sects? Christianity got about over, 20,000 sects? 1,000. Not just 2,000. Now, but yet no one notices that the priesthood did this to humanity. because they don't suspect that the priesthood are the demons. That's the demons' coven. Is the church. One of the keys to the conquest of the world. That's why, as late as when people started arguing about rights, and this is why they set up the enforcement of the 14th Amendment, and you'll see even then they closed down consular courts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Back to our earlier conversation with the brothers and sisters from Jamaica in Japan. 1954 to 56, and set up the territorial jurisdiction of the Kingdom of Morocco, which is a subdivision of the Moroccan Empire, and then they relinquished jurisdiction, consular venue at North America during the Eisenhower administration. Now our people have no rightful venue, which had been blocked off, since the 1800s anyway. And then they create the 14th Amendment civil rights venue. So anytime they murder our people, they won't call it murder, they call it civil rights violation. They hang our people, say, oh, civil rights. Then they would pay John 8:44 people, lawyers, and raise finance to argue civil rights cases, which was also taken over as an example, the governing factor of the Niagara movement, where the women of the North, where they always met by the Great Lakes, and the rebellion in the late 1800s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Known as the Niagara movement.
Became the NAACP.
Exactly, taken over by John 8:44 people.
Mm-hmm.
And it became NAACP. And our people have been funding their own enslavement since then. But yet they keep claiming to be spiritual. They have no comprehension of government. Now, as you brought to my attention, which I already, we know, but it's for the sake of conversation with the people, right? The activities of Jekyll Island, without us going into detail,
mm-hmm.
with Woodrow Wilson, Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, Woodrow Wilson, Prater, president for the United States Corporation Company that went bankrupt 1912, and they met 1913, etc., sold the residuals of the stock to the Circle Church and Chancery operatives who were running anyway the judicial system here, unbeknownst to the masses of the people. Because there's never been a lawful Article 3 court operating on the land at North America since 1789, when they placed George Washington in as the 9th praetor, which why it's necessary for them to teach the masses that George Washington was the first president when he was the 9th. So they block out even contemporary history. Yet all of these people, the Abernathys, the Michaels, who's known as Martin Luther King,
mm-hmm.
the Jesse Jacksons, and all of them who all have fezzes in secret, and J. Edgar Hoover, the hybrid European, who also has fez. And for those of you who are listening,
I heard that he may not have been.
Yeah, but let's look
that.
Let's look at this. This is just for people who are listening.
Okay.
So go on your websites and look at all of the political leaders and so-called noted so-called leaders at North America who secretly and some more openly wear the Moorish fez in their lodges. And you'll see all these same people while they're pretending that our people are black. But our people believed in them, so our people never questioned. So under the civil rights operations, and so they create, the victimization issue with a woman named Rosa Parks,
yeah.
who wasn't even the woman. Wasn't even the woman.
Yeah, we way back then. It's interesting. We talk about today how many switcheroos. They may not have used the technology
masking
of right
and proxy,
right, but they were switching folks for the, you know, some said, oh, it was because the real woman, a young woman, was a young woman, she was pregnant, she was unmarried,
but
and they
what
if
happens
she was
with our people? What have our children and a lot of adults been talking about for years? Rosa Parks.
Yeah.
It has what? Taken root.
Yeah.
And it's a what? A false narrative. And even people who know it won't challenge it because they don't want to do what? Break the spell.
Right. Upset.
In the name of good. Even just like most people don't even know that Martin Luther King is Michael.
Yeah.
Just like most people don't even know that the photographer that was assigned to him was an FBI agent, who also don't know the obvious, why all his buddies that was on the balcony comfortably stepped to the left, to the left, to the left. And if you go and review some of the pictures were taken, you'll notice that when he noticed they stepped to the left, he looked where they were looking, and before he was shot, you'll see his eyes were bright. You know, like when somebody like
the balcony was
not right across the way.
Was not that big because, you know,
right across the way.
In 2019, I was there, and so I have pictures. I'm standing looking at, like, it was like, you know, one of those old motels with the so very small balcony, and the place where they allege across the street, they've now put a plexiglass around where they say this was the where the window was that the shooter, alleged shooter,
and the guy Ray, who was the fall, didn't even do it. But that's another.
Yes, that's another story. But I'm just saying, this is the government.
Yeah.
That we have been under.
Your government,
right?
That our people keep thinking is their government,
right?
What do? Close the record. And also,
and when they open them up years later, everything is redacted.
Also,
you know,
you find out that they smothered him in his hospital bed because he wasn't dead. Yeah. They smothered him. And it's not unknown, but you see these so-called civil rights leaders don't emphasize that at all to protect the narrative.
Right.
No different than when they killed Kennedy, and then they come to the hospital and put a bullet on the gurney.
Okay. Allegedly.
Now let's talk about dissolution.
Yeah.
People need to know that in entity constructs, when an entity goes bankrupt, another term that's used in bankruptcy is dissolution. So even when you're talking about, say, the Organic Act of Congress 1871 that we mentioned to the people, February the 2nd, 1871, that's dissolution. When they talk about sine die, now, S-I-N-E, D, just like die, D-I-E, sine die means out, without day. And in the operations of organized government or organized corporate entity, a sine die is an adjournment of the trustees of the entity or organization and set not a date for reorder, which means they dissolved the platform. That means the republic order, constitutional order for the Republic States United, known as the United States of America political republic order, was overthrown and dissolved by the trustees who were in charge of it, which you know as congressmen and senators, who were really and actually members of the Roman Curia and the Circle Church and Chancery, which is why most people operating at North America, Canada, and the islands are not aware that all of their so-called court systems operating under the doctrine of discovery were regulated secondarily by the Queen of England under the Trinity operations. This is why when you go through all the islands, their coinage and everything has a Queen of England on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the people don't understand that because they're conquered Moroccans. So they make all these different names, and our people keep thinking that they're separate. That's the Spanish Inquisition. Keep in mind, Al-Andalusia was not called Spain until after 1492. When Ferdinand and Isabella merged their kingdoms, Castile and Aragon.
And moved into
Aragon took over the palaces.
The Alhambra as
and to this very day, the Alhambra is called one of the seven wonders of the world, and is used to this very day. You know, so when they took over, and you'll look at the stock certificates for the gold, etc., as used in the 1800s, and many of you who have traveled in Washington area can go look through the glass cases and see that the fiat currency for the United States was once redeemable gold and silver. And you'll notice that in the 1800s is when they put the seal back on. You know, that is the Great Seal pyramid of the Moabite nation, etc. So most people, when they look at the pyramid with the eye separated on the back of the dollar bill, which is an oxymoron, don't know that belongs to them. This is why whenever our people get associated with any of these things, they always give it a negative so our people will reject it. See, so anything that is actually belonging to us, they would always associate it with the devil. And yet they all use it in their secret societies, contaminate everything. So that as we begin to learn certain things, we ourselves would reject. And as we reject, that's called abandoning your estate. Because our people don't want to be associated with, quote unquote, the devil, not knowing that it's masking. If you get the point. Now, just like much that you've been doing over these recent years to help people, you know, with the technology of AO scan, stuff like that. In recent, some other things that you might, you know, share with our listeners, etc. All of that's old technology, and it's lightweight
compared to what is really out there.
Always been there. The whole subject of med beds, that they're kind of leaking hints out, right? That will be issued to start healing people around the world, but they still got to clean out the pits of hell. You know, even though the battle's been going on for over 20 years. And many people are doing a little bit of study think this stuff is recent. No, it's not. You know, they had to get to a certain point of reversal before they could even talk about anything at all. Because remember, they use us. One of the things that have been doing by our people not knowing themselves or the power of the self or the conscious, subconscious, and supra-conscious mind, and that the energies of the sun, this is why they've been trying to block out the sun with chemtrails, because it activates the DNA. And because we're in the Aquarian energy, they can't stop it. So everything that was created under the priesthood of Pisces, you know, this is also why they won't show the people the sign of Yashur, the double fish. The double fish. They won't explain that in the metaphor of the ancient Berber, Moabite tribes, etc. And why Herod was trying to kill the firstborn type thing, is because they knew the time would come that as the energy changed, that women would start producing what you would call, what some code call ebony children.
Like our little baby girl today.
Yeah.
She
for real.
Yeah.
By nature. So
Right.
we're talking about, so politically, they have control as long as the people are asleep. But when the sun arises into the new light, the Korean light, it has healing in its wings.
Absolutely. And that's what it says.
And the deal of it is that by virtue of that, what people thought was junk DNA, because that's what they were told, activates just like a seed. So a lot of people around the world right now are going to doctors because of headaches they're having, sweating they're having, and stuff like that, when actually their pineal gland is activating. And they think there's something wrong with them because they don't know that they're actually having Kundalini awakening.
Yeah.
And you also call it ascension. Also refer to anointing my head with oil. All it means the same thing. Nirvana. This is what's taking place. So those who really know will try to act like it's just political, and you hear them making statements like it can't be stopped. Nothing can stop it. That's really what they're referring to. Because our third dimensional politics is just a reflection of what's taking place in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th dimension already. The battle's really already won. It just ain't manifesting. It's manifesting in stages, layers. When we always talk about layers. And some will say planes. Some will say dimensions. But they all mean the same thing. And so when people, the priesthood know this. This is why you see a lot of hybrid Europeans in the last, say, 7, 8 years, we're making all these different videos telling you some of the real politics. They're trying to get it. They're trying not to get the wrath. That's not coming. It's already here. And people think they're all of a sudden being moral and ethical. No, what they're trying to do is not to get the response, the divine response that's already here. In other words, and another code for it is that Jesus came again. And so people say, oh, Jesus coming with petals and all this love. No, he come with a sword. That's why you hear me sometimes say Adul. And Juali say the code, Jesus means justice.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesus is a code word for justice. And Adul, which means justice. And that's why you have what is known in the symbol called the two-edged sword. So Jesus is the two-edged sword. So all of these things are relative, but if people don't know the Berber culture, they sometimes take these things absolutely literal and not in their metaphorical presentment in their original form. That's why it was necessary for the 72 priesthood to alter even when they took altered the ancient scripts when they made the Septuaginta. That's why it's called Septuagint, which means the seven. So they actually had 72 priesthood, but they rounded to the seven. That's why the first translations are called Septuagint. That's the seven priesthood who altered the books into the Septuaginta. Then they took it from Septuaginta and made Biblios Heliotech, which becomes the Bible or Book of the Sun. So people think the Bible is necessarily what they call the name of the book that they've been presented. In Bible, it just comes from Biblios, which is an Asiatic city where we did a lot of papyrus printing. So the Bible is really a general term for, like you might so call, printing area or printing place. Biblos. And so they just applied that name to the Heliotech. So instead of calling it the Heliotech, they call it the Bible, because they don't want people to know that it's the book of the sun.
Yeah.
The book of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Now, scholars know this, and this is back to comprehension. And this is back to when Drew Ali said, go back to that state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you have a knowledge, that's why they don't teach history and law together. Your comprehension, your clarity. And so they know that as people get information, that their concepts would begin to clear up by default, not because of necessarily, although it helps, things that people do or say. That the time will come that nature herself kicks in. Has nothing to, at that point, you have no power because it doesn't recognize person or station. It's energies. It's divine. However, when we're talking you, we're talking plural. For our own sakes, it's in our interest to assist, to reduce the bloodshed. So now the dark side is going to try to kill these people off as fast as they can because they know the sword is coming for them. So they teach the masses that Jesus is coming with blessedness and pies and cakes for everybody. He comes with a sword. So they're looking for this good passive Jesus guy that, oh, thank you, Jesus, oh, sandwiches, thank you for the peanut butter sandwich. And their head's going to be at their feet. Totally not what they expect. The hybrid priesthood know that this is what's coming. So it was necessary for them to do what? Use the 666 corporations controlling all news outlets to do what? To put the people back to sleep. Therefore, expurgatorius and prohibitorum, commonly referred to today as censorship, because of the wake up. Now,
and you can also, this might not be government, but I got to put this in because it's current, and it irks the what out of me. But the situation with we talked about it, with Ye and Kyrie Irving, to me, and this is my
and even keep on going. Don't lose your thought. I just want to interject this, because you had mentioned earlier today, right? Because we never finished our conversation because we had company that came,
right.
And people and yourself was making reference to Kyrie Irving taking a stand in a position, and then
capitulating because
now, all right. So as people have learned, right, that Hollywood belongs to the CIA. CIA belongs to the Jesuits. Now, that's fact. Mm-hmm. They answer to the hierarchy of the crown. The crown, to the common people, they think Queen of England and Buckingham Palace. The crown is the Bar Association and Buckingham Palace. So when people hire lawyers, that's why they lose their birthright. But they don't know that because they don't know the connection. Now, the deal of it is the NBA, 3-letter sports,
mm-hmm.
MBA,
NFL.
Yeah, NFL,
Mm-hmm.
all belong to the Jesuits. Therefore, when Kyrie spoke out, I guarantee you, it's according to how they walk to him. It's not only his capacity to make a living. It's also his family will be dissolved.
His capacity.
Family will be dissolved.
Right.
See, what they usually do, they don't always come directly at you. What they'll do is just simply make a call, and then all of a sudden, your mom or your dad loses their job. Not only that, then the bank calls in the loan for their house. And then they foreclose.
Mm-hmm.
And you discover the connection, and you do what? What Kyrie did. Capitulate.
Mm-hmm.
No different than you holding a solid position now on certain things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then they let you know, oh, you know somebody named Henry?
Mm-hmm.
He got a family, don't he? He got nice children, don't he? All right? And then they do something like this. See, we own that.
Mm-hmm.
You want them on the street? And that's what they do. Now, this is what is not in the public domain, but this is what's going on. Just like the people, they'll talk about, and as we were talking earlier, as people are growing up, maturing to the operations of the political arena, even though they've been set 6 feet apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They even put it on pay. They even made a business out of making signs, putting it on the ground.
You know, they went from 6 feet under to 6 feet apart to 6 feet under.
Yes, 666.
Yeah. yeah. So.
And
but I see the point I was, because
go ahead.
I'll forget. No, I won't. But the point I was trying to make, I was watching Dane Calloway last night live, and so he was talking about the whole situation and how, and he was showing clips, and Kyrie was, keep, like you said, standing on his square with regard to, this is what I said, this is what I meant. I didn't mean, you're saying it means this, but this is why I posted it. I'm learning about myself, blah, blah, blah. So, he's standing on it. Somewhere in the midst of the live, somebody posted up, said he apologized. And so Dave says, no, he didn't apologize. No, because then he pulls up the Instagram, and lo and behold, like 38 minutes prior to somebody saying that, there was a post with Kyrie Irving, and he brought it up, showed it, and he was apologizing. And what immediately came to mind for me was with him, what's happening with Ye, what's happening with Kyrie, and anyone, Lamont, anyone that is standing up for what's true. What it was, I was like, what is obvious? I said that the Jim Crow with them Christian black codes and all that stuff is still in effect. And I said, these men, they take our strong,
to make an example.
Right, to make, like, but I felt like the whipping post was back installed, and they were being publicly stripped, humiliated and whipped at the MSM whipping post to show everybody else, look what we did to them, to control the rest of narrative. Us, and to control everybody else, to put fear in speaking out for those things that are true. And I'm saying with Dave, when these things happen that allegedly offend a whole
they're not nothing was said offensive, really.
Well, when it's said that is what's happening, okay. But what happens when something happens that is an affront to our people? We can't put out any, you have offended the Moorish, the black, or whatever you want to call us community, and you need to pull, you need to sit that newscaster down, strip him of his, strip her of that. They don't do that. But we are supposed to kowtow and do the backslide.
What do you recognize? So what's happening? This is what's happening. It's a claim of their estate.
Is that what it is?
Under wardship tenures. Write this down, y'all. Wardship tenures. And look at it in law. So the revenuing of the right is what's put in civil orders. What is the civil orders? This is where, since the military operations have been taking place and they start arresting members of the bishopric, then the Popes of Rome did the civil orders. That's why we tell people make those connections. See, because it's sort of like when the people have these documents that you share with them on the flash drive and in our conversations over the years, that gives them, we're restoring points of reference, that without those points of reference, their concepts and comprehensions almost guaranteed to be incorrect.
Right.
Limited and notwithstanding their good intentions. Just like our people, think that beliefs makes you a surgeon. Your knowledge of anatomy and your capacity to understand the rhythm of the bodies the blood, the anatomy in general, with skill, may qualify you to some limited degree, and specific at that, to enter the crystal stream of the body and not kill the patient. Your emotions don't get it. Your beliefs don't get it. Your knowledge of anatomy and skill level gets it. And even then, there's possibility of severe injury. Sure. You know, and so what our people have been trained under animal husbandry is that their belief systems, guised as spirituality, which is just as fraudulent as fiat, is called blind faith, right? They have been cultivating to their own offspring. And of course, generation to generation, continued failure, continued broken families, continued single mothers, continued economic depravity, and yet they've held on to it and won't let it go. Now, because it's been exported around the world, other nation states, to save themselves, have come together, organized. That's been over 20 years actually too. But in recent years, it's come out and it's called BRICS. And there's another term that they use, acronym they use for the Americas, not just the OAS, Organization of American States, where they stopped trading. And they came together because they know individually they can't beat the Pope's army. So they came together in alliance. That's what's often called alliance.
Is that not what's missing with us?
Of course, we haven't been a part of it. Although a lot of the activities that have been initiated from active Moors here have encouraged many outsiders to step up, because we are the hub. We just don't know we're the hub. However, because of the corruption, we've been too slow. So the world had to come together to save themselves. So again, like we talked before, like people are being guided, that disclosure is only the pictures that they see in old art with these flying vessels in old art to show them that it's old, and they keep talking alien, 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 and they don't to avoid telling them interterrestrial, not extraterrestrial.
Or the floods, the mud floods, and all
the honeycomb of Midgard.
All of the grandeur that was lied to the people when they created all those World's Fairs, yes, saying that they built all these.
Tearing down the buildings already.
Their buildings were there. They were going to tear them down, make sure they put them up real quick. But these were buildings
they couldn't put them up real quick.
I know they did, but they claimed they did.
Yeah. Well, the claim now that is called masking and proxy. Even 99% of all the wars that have taken place around the planet, and they're constant, are proxy wars.
Covering for something else.
In other words, no, they do things in other people's names.
Well, like, I guess we can't call them the like FF. The FF that word.
Currently, as an example, they'll say ISIS. Mm-hmm. That's a mask for CIA operatives.
Right.
Who answer to the Pope of Rome.
Yeah. They
under the United States Corporation Company and funded thereby. What else? Presently, the Ukrainian war. Israeli Khazarian Mafia, same ones that own the press. And also known as the Congressional Industrial Military Complex.
Is it Eisenhower that spoke about
it? That's what he told, and Kennedy implied it too. And of course, during Eisenhower's administration, now let's get back to them closing down consular courts. This is again, as we talk, why you see so much pushback when finally, after all these years, people started acting on the restoration of Article 3 consular court venues. And then you have people who should be teaching it, attacking it any kind of subtle way they can to try to discredit it. But instead, people are looking at, say, personalities. As an example, Lamont, Mauricio, or myself, or Sister Light. And they're looking at personalities and not the principle. Because we're trained to that. And then try to tear down the principle by association of schismata. But that's the venue. And back to even our earlier conversation, with any issue that the brothers and sisters may have in Japan, is very simple. It's called the consular venue.
And that's what they, for them and anybody else that's somewhere
anybody else anywhere.
When they want to create that, if there's none around them, what do they do?
This is the point. Now, once they start activating their Moorish pedigree, automatically the treaties come into force anyway. They're already there. It's just that it's been dormant because we haven't been active.
We talking what, peace and friendship,
and we keep thinking it's
Tripoli. Which one? I mean,
yeah. Tripoli, all of them. This is why Obama made the statement he made when he went to Egypt to the convention with world government representatives from around the world. International convention. What did he bring up? Anybody who's listening, look up Obama's speech at the International Convention on the oldest operating treaties on the planet. And pay attention to what he's saying. And what's he talking about? Treaty with Morocco. But the context when you look or pay attention is what? It's inclusive of many jurisdictions that we're looking at as separate nations. That are categorized in a collective format. But as long as these people don't know that they're Moors, they won't claim, will they? Which means they themselves are abandoning. So the rest of the civilized world is activating.
So you're saying all of the treaties are still in effect?
Always been.
Why? Well, who has to enforce them? How are they enforced?
This is back to, how we talk very often, and we talk about nationalization, etc. And people keep saying, where is the government? We keep telling them that you're the government. Mm-hmm. Then they turn around right after you make that statement. We're talking about comprehension. And they'll say, where is the government? Yeah, but where is the government? If you have 3 people meeting, that's your government. Public discourse is the government. Displaying and exercising the principles is government. It's not a place to go or country to be reached. It's a state of mind and what you confess. It's a status. It's an abstract.
Yeah, but it doesn't move the hybrid.
Move.
No, I'm saying the hybrid doesn't move the hybrid.
When you are correct. See, this is what you got to remember, right? As we're talking on these added levels, right? If you're talking to a hybrid European, he knows what you're talking about. And he don't have to figure it out. He knows that the people don't know. This is why they control the narrative. Because the people themselves step off their square as soon as pressure put on them. Look at these people.
Like Tarik.
Yeah, not just that. Remember when brother made the movie in Philadelphia, on that small street in Philadelphia area, the movie Trading Places.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Murphy.
Right.
And the movie start off, he's on a little dolly.
Like
as
he has
if
no
he
legs.
didn't have no legs.
Right.
Legs are foundation, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about what? Stock market.
Mm-hmm.
and the implication that he's trading power position with the hybrid European, when the reality is it's reverse.
They traded with us.
They traded places. So what, Philadelphia? Where was the convention, Knights of Columbus, Ku Klux Klan convention held in 1854? Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Horace Greeley, the newspaper tycoon that came into the Whigmore Party, they had a convention at Philadelphia, and they agreed to start calling themselves, quote unquote, white people.
Speaking
which is
of
a law legal status.
Speaking of white people
Mhm.
and white lives matter, when I saw the big controversy over that T-shirt, I was saying, well, if you look at it in truth,
thank you.
They do, because that's us.
Exactly. But now you see the reverse masking
Mhm.
and the necessity of the branding. As an example, now let's look at this. Stop now, Yola. Is American heritage, and where's the other one? You'll see dictionary, because that's the one that has the etymology in the back. And I don't think it's up here. Did we take it down? But I'm looking at this one to see if it's in this one. But it's actually the other one. You see the other one that says American Heritage Dictionary, and you'll see.
Sorry, y'all. That's him, not me.
Yeah. I'll put this back up later.
Dangerous.
And you'll see the other one that has Dick in his hyphen, dictionary.
Okay.
When you see that one, we'll break it down. That one has the etymology in the back.
I see.
This one, I think, is the version that doesn't. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
No etymology. You know, and this is back to how we always tell people the multiple dictionaries that they must have. Oh, I'm surprised that it's not here, because it would be.
Well, there's a hole right there, so
it would be here.
You probably took it out.
Yeah, I probably did, which is here. Now, now look at this. See that?
Yeah, I see.
Now here's etymology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is back to even when you're talking about the Dungy case that took place before the Dred Scott case of 1853, 4, 5 in that area, right? And you'll see a lot of people talk about the Dred Scott case, and you'll see limited scholars ever mention to the people the Dungy case and the slander, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at the etymology of black as an example. And you know, as we were downstairs and we were talking to the company, not the company corporate, we're talking about the visitors we had, and I took the brother to the dictionary. So let's look at black, right? So you have black here, and of course you know etymologically it's an adjective. Classification of words, etymon, basic third grade grammar and grammatication. Black is an adjective. It's a modifier. It's not a proper noun. And so therefore someone who's reading knows that when it's presented as a name of a people, is pejorative, or what you call a slander.
Okay.
Now, because you know that the people don't know that because they can't read, it would never dawn on them to look at slander laws that they don't even know exist. So if they get slandered or abused, they call it racism and stuff like that, and still slander.
The Dungy case was.
Yeah, Dungy case is exactly that.
There.
So now you see black here, right here in the dictionary, right? And then you look at the etymology, right in the bottom, and it says C. Beale, right? So you go into your etymology, right? And your etymology will show you Beale, and it means important derivatives of Beale. All right, this is the true meaning of the word. So black is Middle English, coming from Old High German and derived from Biel. So it means to shine, to flash, to burn, shining, and various bright colors. It also means beluga from Russian bilyai, which means white. Philaro from Greek, philaros, having a white spot. Suffix variant forms bleu from Old French, bleu, B-L-E-U, bleu, from Germanic, was, bleu. Zero grade form, wool, flavescent, flavo, flavin, from the Latin flavus, golden yellow, varus extended, Germanic, bleach, from Old English, blakon, bleak, etc. And so its derivatives are what? Blank, blanket, blancmange, Old French blanc, white, etc. Bleach, flash, shine, etc. So our people think it means melanated skin, and it actually means pale colors. So the Paleolith, hybrid Europeans, that's why in the Knights of Columbus Ku Klux Klan oath, they took on the title, because it also has a legal collective meaning. So in your Black's Law Dictionary, that's why they tell you it does not mean Caucasian race. This is again why they do not teach jurisprudence with our people. But it's also why people who come here from other political jurisdictions have very little respect for so-called Black leaders or civil rights leaders, because they know, being Masons and Eastern Stars, that they know better. But they've been compromised.
I was told that when I read this, maybe even yesterday, that when they're doing the numbers, which list us as minorities, everyone who comes here, that they consider foreign, almost they give them a white status to boost their numbers. That so they can be brown, they can be as darker than you or me, but they would be white. Okay. They're listed as white, and then they're given that when they start to say, oh, they're minorities because there's more white people, so-called white people.
And see now, and this is back to the misconception, comprehension. The people think it means numbers. It doesn't. It means legal status.
Well, I know that, but they count the heads of people, the numbers of people that we would not even consider to be hybrid Europeans. They count them. They give them a so-called white status. And it shows as if they're more.
See, they don't give them. They don't give them a white status.
Well, they encourage them to put that down.
With nationals, the white status exists with them.
Right.
They acknowledge their free white status. They don't give it to them.
Right. But we don't have it because we call ourselves Negro, black, and colored.
The black title or term colored means artificial persons,
right,
which means corpse,
right,
the dead.
Right.
This is why, in relationship to the economic and political status of our people, it is called minority, wardship, etc., and civil litter, mortus.
Dead in the eyes of the law. Right?
So and this is again why you'll see so much effort is made to block communications of people who know from teaching people who do not know.
Mm-hmm.
It's why it's also necessary for them to control, i.e. the education platform. And this is back to the John D. Rockefeller, Frederick T. Gates. And that same family and foundation is also putting nanobots into the people's crystal stream under bio operations, So here's law, right? So this is the status. And this is back to even people. The people's mentality is always directed to numerical value, isn't it? Every time you say minority, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you say free white people, they're free and we ain't. They keep looking at it as an attitude or a pedigree of humans with a complexion, right? By law, free white persons is assumed by general referation or referring of the Naturalization Act of July the 14th, 1870. So write that down, y'all. Natural, like not nationalization, Naturalization Act, right? 1870. And keep that date in mind because there's a lot of things that occurred 1870. Keep that in mind. Has meaning naturally given to it and first used in 1 Statute 103 C3, meaning persons belonging to the European races commonly counted as white. So now you got to look at the convention in Philadelphia and the Whiggamore parties and the conscience Whigs and the Cotton Whigs in debate and splitting, creating the political platforms that have been governing the people's estates ever since, known as the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. So you have to have a background into the geography or the geopolitics that your concepts and comprehensions of what you see taking place every day are correct. Without that reference point, we are what? Locked into the controlled narrative that's put in place to maintain the condition of wardship so they don't have to account for the profits made from human trafficking. Because a non-competent being is not descendable by law. So let me read this real quick so that people can get a concept, because some people might get lost in what we're talking about. And this is back to where we're dealing with comprehension and dissolutions, right? So free white persons includes all European Jews, more or less intermixed with peoples of Celtic, Scandinavian, Teutonic, Iberian, and Latin and Greek and Slavic descent. Free white persons includes Magyars, Lapps and Finns, and the Basque and Albanians. Free white persons include the mixed Latin, Celtic, Iberian, and Moorish inhabitants of Spain and Portugal. Free white persons includes the mixed Greek, Latin, Phoenician, and North African inhabitants of Sicily. So you see it's a legal status. It's not a matter of whether they're darker than you. Our people keep thinking the phenotype operations of mind control set up by Carlos Linnaeus and Frederick Johann Blumenbach that has been adopted for mind control and classification caste system, particularly at North America, and exported to the world. You see? So once you know that, your comprehensions of the politics changes. Therefore, what you do, choose to do, affiliate with, project, speak of, conceptually, would be clarified or purged or cleansed. And you'll be reborn with a new mind. Because every word you speak, you're casting spells. So the corruption continues because we ourselves keep projecting it. Even though we know and have been told that the word is God. And then we know that the priesthood is always teaching, quote unquote, the word, and don't charge them with demon spells that they are deliberately casting on the people, hiding behind Jesus, hiding behind Muhammad. And it's not unknown. It's just no one wants to rock the boat and tell the truth. And then even when they want to somewhat tell the truth, rather than say that these people are Moors, they'll say things, well, you know, the melanated people trying to dance around the truth. Lack of courage and also an indication of dishonesty. Now, did the melanated people build civilization? Did the melanated people make the treaties that Obama was talking about? Or did the Moors?
The Moors.
Oh, what makes it so hard for these people to start telling the truth? The more and more you look at this, the more and more you recognize why it's necessary for the rest of the world to step in, because we're compromised. Even in the name of so-called trying to do good, we're so corrupted and compromised that we keep on dancing around. No different than conversation earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kyrie learning the truth, right? And as soon as they pull the hammer down, what did he do? Start apologizing. What did he say that was wrong? Or that was even an attack on him? Nothing.
No.
Nothing. Explaining facts that he's learning.
And he wasn't, I don't get that he was
apologize for learning.
He just posted what he was learning.
I'm just saying, apologizing what he's learning.
But you can't unlearn it. You can't unhear it and see it.
Exactly. So now let's look. Free white persons, right? Includes those of Slavic descent, right? Including Magyars, Lapps and Finns, and the Basque and Albanians, Moorish inhabitants of Spain, etc. North African inhabitants. So our people here get confused when they have on their passport white people, and who starts attacking it? Ignorant people who think they're black.
Mm-hmm. Status, not complexion.
Right?
Political status, yeah.
And what does it say? Law. Free white persons does not mean Caucasian race. Free white person does not mean Aryan races. Free white person does not mean Indo-European races. That's law. It's not hidden. But all these so-called scholars that keep writing these black books know this. And know why in all of their lodges they're wearing the Moorish fez. But the people go to them to learn about Jesus, Muhammad, and everyone, not knowing these people are traitors. We've been compromised.
They want to be us.
We keep trying to be U.S. citizens. That stop.
I was reading a book. I mean, I'm not so crazy, but just the subject matter, The Delectable Negro, and on Script. But there's other books, because I didn't realize that there was a real, we were talking about drinking various substances from people. I didn't realize that back, even going back to the time of allegedly Nat Turner and all, they were consuming the flesh of Moors.
Yeah.
And we were a delicacy. We were something that.
In one of the museums in Philadelphia, and I think they moved it, is a couple of what are those blankets, quilts that they make the history on?
Patchwork, like quilt.
Where the so-called Christian tradition of feeding babies to the crocodiles in Florida. Our children. I'm talking about
they were
eating so-called Seminole.
I'm not talking
about doing that.
They were eating not just children. They were when someone would get lynched, they would take the parts of the body. Some would keep them for souvenirs, but
they
some
called nigger toes.
Literally eat the flesh, eat the bodies because they
take the power,
eat the male phallus because they thought that they would get the same prowess.
Yes, these are the people. That our people are sitting around talking about whether they're racist or not, or whether they like your color or not, to avoid telling the truth. The beast nature. The drag. Why do you think the Ku Klux Klan leaders are called grand dragons? Look in the Bible when they talk about the woman giving birth to the child, right? She was pregnant, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's a metaphor for the rebirth of the nation. But that's the whole point. And then the dragon stands nearby her, waiting for the child to be born in order for it to devour the child. Why don't just devour the mother and the child got a bigger meal? Because it's a metaphor. If a wild beast has a prey of a pregnant cow or antelope or wild beast, etc., does it stand by and wait for it to give birth to the child, to devour the child, or do it eat them both at the same time?
I would think you get them both.
All right. So why in the Bible, when it talks about the dragon, the woman is with child, and the dragon's sitting waiting for her to give birth to the child so it can devour the child?
Well, I would
because
think
it's a metaphor
for
about
what
the
the child
rebirth
would
of the
bring.
nation.
Okay, so but I'm going to say what the child would bring forth is more of a threat than
Yes.
than the one giving
Even
birth.
the issue or the metaphoric story about killing the firstborn.
Herod, yeah.
And so yet that is carried out through what? The so-called rights of women with the abortion rules. They've been invited to participate in what? Child sacrifice under the guise of women's rights in order to transfer the guilt. So that means they themselves are delivering the offspring to Rome. So therefore, this is why, like in the Christian Codes Article 6, Christian Codes Article 6, right? This is why they always steal the placenta.
Hmm.
They use it for cloning. They use it for makeup for hybrid European women, and they use it for food. Anyway, concept now, dissolution. Keep in mind, really quick, the U.S. corporation has been dissolved, i.e. bankrupt. Dissolution. The consciousness is dissolving in dissolution of our wrong concepts by having proper comprehension of what government is and what government is not. So I'll close with this statement. Governments are constructed by men in political jurisdiction at Midgard in the different territories to serve relative to preserving the pre-existing birthrights of humans. Governments are the people with their divine sovereignty agreed under contract, which is called constitutions and treaties, given to qualified men and women in offices of trust to preserve. Such rights are not privileges and cannot be converted into privileges, for they are unalienable. You can't put a lien on it. Therefore, they are referred to as inalienable and unalienable rights, which constitutes birthright. Have a great evening.
Wow. Well, hopefully we have. I know we touched on a few things, a few in general, but we want to thank you all for tuning in to our broadcast this Friday. We also want to do two other things before we go. We just want to let the sisters know that we are really, really, really getting very close to having our first gathering of those who are signed up to be part of the Women Are Ready or the War. So we ask that you would band together with us and text the word war, your name and email address to the number on the screen, 302-345-0500, and you will be placed on the list. We are, Grandchic, we have gone over 200 sisters so far, so excited about that. And excuse me, we would greatly appreciate it, and you will be contacted as soon as we are ready to officially get started. The other thing we want to do is invite you to support us here at House of Reawakening Minds. We appreciate those who have responded to any other requests, but we are asking, your sustaining support is needed. House of Reawakening Minds. We urge all regular viewers to become sustaining supporters with a minimum monthly donation of just $1. We thank you in advance for your support. You can support us via Cash App, and then you see that here, and it's going across the screen as well, or PayPal, or you can also, send a money order or something if you want to the House of Reawakening Minds, which we're located at 602 Vandover Avenue in Wilmington, Delaware Territory, zip exempt 19802. We greatly appreciate you. We also are letting you know, right, Grand Sheik, that we're getting close to getting the building finished, so that some of you have been saying, when is the building going to open back up? Soon. Soon. We're not sure if we're going to be able to have an event, Grand Sheik, before the end of the year, but if we can, we certainly will. And we are very grateful to the volunteers that have been coming out, from as far and wide, to help us from California and, the Carolinas and places all in between, Philly, New York, New Jersey. We thank you. We thank you, and we appreciate your support. So again, hopefully this conversation.
Yes. Now take different points, because although we were all over the place, they were necessary.
Yes.
To clear, because remember, the issue that we're talking about is comprehension and dissolution.
Right.
And key to both of them is understanding, understanding, overstanding the political activities that are bombarding the people as of late, and also comprehend and understand that these people who have been claiming to be government have been dissolved.
Right.
The bankruptcy equals, in law, dissolution. So stop assigning authority to them that they do not and never did have.
Thank you. We appreciate you, and we are out of here. Until next time, this is Grand Sheik Tarik Bey, yours truly, Dr. Naila, or Dr. G, bidding you a fine and good rest of your holy day, evening. Thank you so much for your donation. We appreciate you, brother or sister. Not sure who that was, but thank you.
The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening.